Computer Science 226, lecture number 3, right, August 25th. Let's start. Today we'll be talking about multidimensional arrays. Okay. First off, a couple of notes. Again, for all the exercises, please use Eclipse or online compiler. Okay. If you have any issues, please schedule an appointment with one of the tutors. Here's the link. In general, we'll be having quizzes on Thursdays and homeworks on Mondays. Email me if you have any questions. Quiz on Thursday, okay, so it's going to be exactly the same way as we did it in spring, online, Blackboard based. Take it any time of the day, everything open, but still individual work, right, so do not cheat. You'll be timed, you'll have only 15 minutes. Everything which was mentioned in class may appear on the quiz, okay. This quiz is going to cover today's material and last time's material, right? Yeah. Okay. As for the notes, please take notes while watching this video, and there will be a couple of more videos which I'm gonna tell you about, which I want you to watch, and also please take notes there as well. Submit them by midnight today. Okay, today I'll be talking about multidimensional arrays. Please read chapter number 8 of your textbook. Okay, so not sure if you remember from the spring semester, multidimensional arrays. What is that? Let me try to draw a couple of things. Okay, so imagine you have a number line, right? You basically have, I don't know, like x, like you have x over here, right? And you have numbers, so like, I don't know, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's so bad. 6, 7. But anyway, so at some point, like, I don't know, probably middle school, elementary school, you decided to go another direction, right? And you create a Cartesian plane. Now I have the y as well. We'll go that way. Okay, and there'll be y. And then we're going to do exactly the same thing, right? So we're going to have 0. Well, hold on, no, 0. I can't do that. 1 second. Delete that. I need to go from over here, from 0. Okay, so that's going to be our y direction. Okay, pretty much the same thing happens with arrays as well. Okay, so that's only one direction. So that's, we have Okay, so we have the 0th element, 1st element, 2nd element, 3rd element, 4th, 5th, 6th element. So we have 7 elements total, right? We start counting them from 0, from 7 elements total from 0 to 6. And unfortunately, that's not as convenient as it might have been, and that's why we can also, again, same thing as we did with the Cartesian plane, we can go another direction. Okay, so we can create another direction, we can go that way, or I would prefer honestly to go down versus up. Okay, so I prefer to go that way. And basically in that case we add in one more dimension. Okay, so you can kind of think about that as a matrix or a table. So that table would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 columns. Okay, you're gonna have that many columns. And then it's really up to you how many rows you want to have. I don't know, let's say that's 1. Let's create a couple more. Let's say that's it. So it's 1st row, 2nd row, 3rd, 4th, right? So 4 rows and 7 columns. Okay, so in this case we're going to have a table, and we can fill that out with, let's say, integers, right? Why not? So we would say, I don't know, 1, 12, 14, 5, 6, 8, and so on, right? So each one of them would have a value. By default it's 0, but it really depends on the compiler. Most likely in your compiler it's going to be 0. Okay, that's a second dimension, right? So when we give a second dimension of when we have one-dimensional array, we give a second dimension, it becomes a two-dimensional array. Okay, that's not the limit, of course. It's possible to have 3 dimensions, so I can technically draw like a 3rd dimension over here. okay? And now each one of those elements, so everything which used to be an element now becomes an array itself. Okay, and let's say that third dimension has the value of 2, right? So there are only 2 elements going that way to the depth, okay? And that's a 3-dimensional array. In Java, it's possible to have 4 dimensions, 5 dimensions, 6 dimensions, 30 dimensions, 1000 dimensions. Totally cool. In practice, though, I didn't use anything. I don't think I ever created an array with more than 5 dimensions or 6. Yeah. For this class, though, you'll at most be using 3 dimensions. Okay. The most important thing which you need to understand is that when you go in from 1-dimensional array into 2-dimensional array, everything which used to be an array, so each element which just used to be an array becomes an array itself. Okay. So again, if I have something like this, okay, so this guy over here, it used to be just an element, right? But now it's going to be an array itself. So that guy over here again, so what was it called? It was called array of 0, right? Okay, and that represented just an element. However, when that guy becomes an array by itself, right? And now it becomes an array by itself. Okay, so now array of 0, it's still called array of 0, it's just bigger. Array of 0 is not an element, array of 0 is an array by itself. And that's why if you want to address specifically this guy, you need to say array of 0 and of 0, like this. This would be array of 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3. Okay. Hope it makes sense. I'm going to provide a couple of videos, by the way, for you guys to watch. A couple of other explanations of how multidimensional arrays are structured. So that's my version of that. Yeah, one more thing. So again, if we talk about the code, right? So let's talk about the code. If we're, the way we're creating one-dimensional array was this, right? Array is equal to new int, let's say 5. Okay. Now, whenever we add a dimension, what we also add in terms of the syntax is the pair of brackets. So it's going to be int 2 pairs of brackets, right? On the left and on the right. In this case, it's going to be kind of matrix, square matrix, 5 by 5. Okay. If you want third-dimensional array, no problem. Just add more brackets. Okay, also 5, something like this. Okay, so let's say that's array 1, 2, 3, right? And let's say you want to print out let's say in this case, let's say in this case you want to print out, I don't know, array, no, let's say array 2, right, of 0, 0, right? So if you print out array of 2 of 0, 0, is that going to be an element or it's going to be an array? Since there are 2 dimensions, right, and we specified 2 coordinates, in that case that means it's going to be an element. However, and that can be very confusing, if I just, for some reason, if I print out array of 0, right, Java is not going to send you an error. It's still going to print that out, and it's going to print out, and it's basically going to think that what you're talking about is an array inside of a table, right? So array 2 of 0 is basically going to be, I deleted that. Okay, it's going to be like 1 column or 1 row, depending on how you see that. But yeah, Java is not going to throw an error on that. Okay. Okay, single-dimensional arrays are sometimes not enough to represent data like tables, matrices. Multi-dimensional arrays can come in handy. Example is a 2-dimensional array. So here's an example, right? Again, a matrix. Like matrix is equal to new int 5 by 5. Okay. Also, be careful about. Oh yeah. Another way you can create an array, right? You can do something like this. int array, and then you can specify immediately the values. So in this case, you don't have to really say like 5 by 5 because it's obvious. It's going to contain, like over here, just based on this, right? It's going to contain 1, 2, 3, 4 rows and 1, 2, 3 columns. Now, if let's say I'm addressing, if let's say I have a two-dimensional array 5 by 5 and I'm saying 0, 1, right? There can be a huge confusion, and sometimes it's very difficult to understand. Is that the 0th column first row or 0th row first column? Okay, so you need to define it for yourself, how you want to like perceive that and how you want that to be functioning. So for me, for example, the first dimension would be the row, and the second dimension would be the column. Again, first dimension is the row, second dimension is the column, right? Yeah. To assign a value 7 to a specific element at row 2 and column 1, right? So again, the first value is the row and second value is the column. As I shown in the figure, you can use the following syntax. So matrix of 2 of 1, and that's actually how it should be called. Matrix of 2 of 1 is equal to 7, right? So second row, first column, it's 7. So again, like all my examples and all the examples in the book will be based on the assumption that the first value is the row, second one is the column. How to initialize such an array, right? So these two guys are equivalent. You can either do this, right? You basically can say int array is equal to new int 4 by 3, and you can say array of 0, 0 is equal to 1, array of 1, 0 is equal to 4, and do all that stuff. So basically create an empty table and then put values in each individual cell. So that's option number 1. Option number 2, do something like this, int array, and then immediately specify the values. Okay. And again, in this case, you don't really have to provide the dimensions, right? How big, how many columns you have, how many rows you have, how many columns you have, because Java will automatically understand that. Another way, again, of thinking about such arrays, and that's what I was talking about. So, for example, if you have x, right? So x of 0, is that an element or an array? So it really depends on what x is. If x is a one-dimensional array, then x of 0 is an element. If x is a two-dimensional array, then x of 0 is an array by itself, one-dimensional array, right? And then x of 0 is this guy, x of 0 of 1 is this guy, x of 0 of 2 is this guy, x of 0 of 3 is this. And again, since x of 0 is an array by itself, you can actually call the same functions, the same methods, and invoke, try to get the same properties as you would do that for a regular array. So for example, you can actually print out x of 0, that length, right? So over here, for example, you can say array 2 of 0, that length. So was that, yeah, and then the question would be like, what's the value of it? Array 2 of 0, that length. And in this case, it's going to be what? It's going to be how many columns you have in the 0th row, right? Which is how many columns I have? 5. I have 5 columns. Moving on. Yeah, so how do we process? If you remember from the previous semester, again, with if you had a one-dimensional array, how did you process that? You need to use for loop. The more dimensions you have, the more loops you need to use. That's kind of the rule of thumb. So one of the other things you definitely need to remember is this. If I have a one-dimensional array, right, most likely when I'm trying to do something with this one-dimensional array, which is create, initialize, multiply the values by each other, add, let's say, 1 to each one of those elements, right? So whenever I'm trying to process a one-dimensional array, I will need to use one for loop. If I'm talking about two-dimensional array, most likely 99% of the time I'm going to use 2 for loops. If 3 dimensions, 3 for loops. 4 dimensions, 4 for loops. 1000 dimensions, 1000 for loops, nested into each other. So here's an example. And I'm going to so definitely go ahead and copy them. Okay, I will be working with those examples on these examples with you together next lecture. Next time. Okay, so let's say we want to initialize array with the input values. Okay, so let's say again, we created that empty table. Now I want to fill that out with some values, and here's how it's supposed to do. Here's how it's supposed to work. We create a scanner, and then we print out like enter matrix.length, right? So enter that many rows and that many columns, right? So in my case, for example, if it's 5 by 5, it's going to say enter 5 rows and 5 columns. And then two for loops, one of them is nested into the other one. Int row is equal to 0, row is less than matrix.length, row plus plus. Okay, so back then, when we were talking about one-dimensional array, right, we were thinking about I, right? So I is equal to 0, I is less than this, I plus plus, that's I, right? In this case, these guys from the book, they decided to use a variable called raw. Completely up to you. I'm usually using I and J. I meaning the rows and J meaning the columns. But that's also nice. Completely up to you. So yeah, and over here for int column is equal to 0, column is less than matrix.length, column plus plus, okay, and matrix of raw column is equal to input.nextInt. Again, be very careful when, let's say, you copy this code exactly, and then sometimes what I see students doing is they kind of, for some reason, they swap these two, matrix of column and raw, and of course it basically makes the matrix transposed, right? You kind of changing the row and column, you swapping them, but basically everything will go wrong after that, right? And again, it's a logical error, logical mistake. Java is not going to complain about that, so you need to be very careful what goes first and what goes next. Or what goes second? Is that the first thing will be the raw, right, or the column, or vice versa? Okay, and a couple of more things. If I want to initialize the array with random values, you do exactly the same thing. You have two for loops, right? You kind of you're going to, at some point, you're going to memorize these two lines, and then matrix of row column is equal to math.random times 100 and typecasted to integer. Printed arrays. To print a two-dimensional array, you have to print each element in the array using a loop like the following. For row column, matrix of row of column, and then this print line. Okay, yeah, that's pretty much it. So what I want you to do, I want you, first off, I want you to watch these two videos. Okay, so there is a YouTube channel. I think it's called the Boston Media. What's the guy name? Hold on.
What's up, guys? Welcome.
Yes. And the channel name is The New Boston. Okay. It's a very useful channel. Highly recommend watching that. The guy explains everything like very colloquially, really well. I noticed that students really like his way of explaining that because it's also very entertaining. However, the verbiage he's using, the way he's saying things are very easy to understand, but for the job interview, unfortunately, they're not really useful. For the job interview, you need to have a plethora of terms. You need to have a mass majority of terminology which you'll be using for the interview, because that's kind of how it works. Okay, so this guy is very easy to understand, but you can't really copy his explanation for the job interview. You can use it to explain it to your friend though. And what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to explain everything in the formal way, in formal terms. Okay, I want you to watch these two videos, take notes as well. Yep, and the exercise, like a small exercise for you before the next class. I want you to create a two-dimensional array of floats, size is 10 by 10. I want you to fill that out with random values between 0 and 1, right? So floats. I want you to add them together, and I want you to display the output in a nice format. So again, you created one matrix, another matrix, and I want you to display the matrix in a very nice way. So like raw, new line, raw, new line, raw, new line. Okay. Yeah, that's it. I'll see you guys on Thursday. Have fun. Bye bye.